energy outside of the cell. What is the energy outside the cell?
Hello everybody! We are here with a special guest, Ken Close. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And we're going to be talking about a really amazing topic, and a lot of people don't know about it. So I would like Ken to talk a little bit about what epigenetic is. He's an epigenetic, and he is a specialist in epigenetics. Can you explain people in a simple way what it means?
Okay, a simple way to talk about the genetic code of the human being. Let me think about that for a second. The epigenetic phenomenon means simply the influence of the genetic code outside the cell. So meaning that when there is a propagation of a code to create the new cell, when cells start to divide, this code, it is what says the new proteins, sets the pace. So there's a very interesting interface that's going on, the energy outside of the cell. What is the energy outside the cell? Well, the inside of the body is the outside of the cell, right? So our inside of our body. The outside of our body is the environment in which we live in, but the inside of the body is the environment the cell lives in. So the energy inside the body dictates exactly the quality, the kind, the type. Now it's going to be a bone cell or a skin cell or a brain cell, right? So 3% of the genetic code says that. It's going to be a bone cell, a skin cell, muscle cell. The other 97% is an adaptive portion of the gene. Adaptive in terms of making sure that the cell fits the host's requirements in its environment. So that outside of the body being the environment, to the influence of the inside of the body being where the cell lives, and the epi phenomenon outside the cell is how the code is written to become a match or a fit for the environment. So that's the epigenetic phenomenon.
Because I remember Dr. Bruce Lipton, he's kind of the pioneer of epigenetics, and he did an experiment in the lab where he had, I believe it was three
Petri dishes, yep.
And he had the exact same tissue or cells in all of them, but the environment was different. So he got bone on one, muscle, and I don't remember what was
skin.
And skin on the other one. So the same cell, same tissue was transformed into something different just because the difference was the environment. So basically, whatever we are surrounded by is going to affect us. Is that correct?
Yeah, what his experiment was, he took stem cells that were cultured from the same cell, so they were split, divide, and then he took that and split them up into three culture mediums, is what you call it. The medium itself was a soup, a sauce, essentially, of the influence to the cell. And so one was the coding structures for skin, one for bone, and one for muscle. And the cell itself read the environment. And because stem cells are very adaptive, different, say, than a skin cell that's already adjusting or multiplying, because there is still a code saying it's going to be a skin cell. Stem cells are different. They can be essentially whatever their environment dictates, the culture medium. And this was a great experiment you mentioned, because he did do that and showed that that energy or the influence of the code, the Petri dish was essentially the influence. But how does it do that? So here's where the fun part comes in, because it just looks like soup, right, or some kind of sauce in this Petri dish. It's called culture medium. But in that medium is an energy. It's a coding system that influences the genetic code, but it's just energy. It's just a signal, right? You can't really see it. You could measure it if you could measure frequency, but but the cell thrives on it. So this is emotions are an energy, right? Thought is an energy. All of the things that go on inside of our body is an influence, a genetic influence. And so if you have a thought of being angry, a thought of being unworthy, a thought of being no good, right? then the cells get the signal from that code, or build that code, and then the body becomes an expression genetically of an unworthy or unhappy or unserving human being. So it can fit outside of its environment. And the interesting part about that is the body starts to attract other like entities. So all of a sudden your friends and the people at the grocery store or the people in traffic feel like they're unfriendly too.
Yeah. It's like that Dr. Candace Pert, remember that she did find a molecule of emotion. So she has an amazing book, it's the Molecules of Emotion. And she talks that every single cell has a receptor. Like receptor is like, imagine the key and the little hole where the lock where you put the key. So it will capture a specific code that has the same shape. So every single cell has that emotion receptor attached to it, connected to it. And if we're thinking about it, we're having that emotion, all these receptors are trapping energy that is anger, for example. Then those cells are going to be filled with anger, and there's not going to be a receptor open for love, for example. So anytime you have an experience of more, like you get upset, you're angry, then that's going to be triggering really fast, because that's the energy that you have in your body.
It's all about efficiency, right? So in other words, efficiency, the body has to be efficient. It has a finite amount of energy. You know, that's why we go to sleep, we recharge, restore. We eat food that creates energy, and we consume that as an engine. And the brain itself is only about 3% of the body mass in terms of weight, but it consumes 20% of the overall energy. So it's important that the brain be very efficient. So same kind of thing with the rest of the body. Every cell has its own brain, its own endocrine system, its own digestive tract, and its own intelligence. But it needs to be efficient. And so the cell receptor sites, as you mentioned, a cell that is created during that division process and the genetic code that's written to the new cell, it writes in those cell receptor sites. So it's more easily, more efficiently propagates the emotional codes from its predecessor. So it's going to have more cell receptor sites, say for angry, if it was created under anger, or joy if it was created under that, right? And so that cell by cell, the body becomes an entity to be more efficient with anger or unworthiness or despair, some of the things that are plaguing people today. You know, in mental health, gosh, the well-being of people today is challenged just because there's so much stimulus out there to be unworthy. I mean, you see somebody with an amazing car, you don't have an amazing car. You see somebody with a great outfit, you don't have a great outfit, right? Good hairdo, I mean, my hairdo's fine. We have a great hairdo, don't we?
Right.
But again, it's this internal state that starts to build an efficient cell receptor site grouping so that the body can be efficient and survive in a world of unworthiness, right?
So I think you say that mentally we're rehearsing the same code, same information. More you reinforce yourself, then those neurons, the signal, that becomes easier to become efficient to send the signal in an over and over way. Then automatically that triggers, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what the Dr. Joe Dispenza they talk about.
It's efficiency. It's about efficiency. And so we build a body. Here's an interesting concept too. Think about it. A body that's diseased and disordered. All right. There's an efficiency to that. The body is efficient at being diseased. It's not efficient at being healthy. It's a propagation. It's a signal that's being built over time. And so chronic disorder, chronic disease, is something that didn't happen just today. It's over time. And there's enough influence over time for the body to have this disorder, right? The body's a super resilient tool. But after a while, the over and over and over redundant circuits just build an efficiency, and that's a lowering of vibration at every cell level. And the energy that gets lower and lower within a cell, the more closer to disease it is. And we can measure that. Here's the cool thing, we can measure the actual cell membrane voltage. Yep. And a healthy cell membrane voltage has a certain level. Anything below that starts to be disorder, right? And so the cool thing is now through meditation, through mindful practices, through yoga things, through now another technology, right? We can actually charge the cell receptors up, or the cell membrane.
Frequency and the vibration.
we can raise it up. We can build it. We can pump in a coherent signal into the body. And when we have two coherent waves, they start to amplify. And now we're charging the body, the cell-by-cell body. And that's the electric body. We can do that. So I think that's super exciting because in the epigenetic world, of course, prayer and meditation are super effective. But now we have an ally that through technology and through microcurrent, we can now, not only can we pump a current flow into the body, whether it be magnetically or through current flow physically in the body, but we can also assign a frequency to it to target very specific cells, organs, and systems, even emotions in the body. And we can down-regulate poor emotions and upregulate good emotions.
Mm-hmm. It's just like the PNEI system, right? Or the studies where psychological, which is part of the emotional state and system, endocrine, immune, the whole system, all these four important, the PNEI, endocrine and immunological, are part of this balance or imbalance that we have. So if we can regulate and increase that frequency, increase the vibration, we will be able to have balance in all these four important areas. That is just incredible. And that's a good thing that Ken mentioned, that we do have the meditation, we have the yoga, we have affirmations, we have visualizations and things that we can do, but technology is a big part, and why not take advantage of technology if it's out there? And there's multiple things out in the market, and then Ken has been exposed to one that is just really amazing, and he has had really good experiences. Do you have like a case that you want to share with us that has kind of changed or transformed their life in a way with the technology?
Yeah, so actually there's several, but today we have a lot of affection for our pets. And so I have a 14-year-old border collie. And 2 years ago we got a new puppy. And this was an Australian Shepherd, and a lot of work with an Australian Shepherd, to keep them, aligned,
balanced.
And so the whole family was really working hard with this new puppy, and my border collie, which was always the center of attention, started to literally retreat from her life. And I noticed she stopped eating, she stopped drinking, she stopped moving, lost all will to live. And I thought something was wrong. I mean, physically. So take her to the vet. We did blood tests. We did some X-rays. We did some other testing like that, and they couldn't find anything wrong. And I was like, okay. They sent me home. So I monitored her for another day. It wasn't getting any better, and she wouldn't eat, couldn't get up. I had to literally carry her outside to try to go potty. The whole works. It was like, this is not the same dog. And so day 3, I took her back to the vet. Said, no, there's something wrong. We got to do some emergency things. And they said, best we can do is give you pain medication. They figured she's on her way out. She's done living. And I was like heartbroken. I said, wait a minute. You know what? I have this technology that not only can implement frequencies, but it also can read the organism. It can read our pets. It can read our bodies. It can read anything that's energetic, plants, cars, buildings. We could read the energy signature and find out what would properly align it. So I did a scan on her, and the first thing that came up, and I have a hard time sometimes saying this without emotion, because it said lack of love from the father.
Wow.
Now,
that's yeah.
That was huge because it hit me right here. And I'm thinking, what? Lack of love from the father? No, I love her, but from her perspective.
Correct.
From an animal's just instinctive, right? There's not a lot of analytics going on there. They're like, well, nobody loves me.
It's just like our brain.
I'm
Our
done.
brain doesn't see the difference between the reality and what we
thought.
think about.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's all part of the equation. And so I thought, okay, this assessment gave me, what it did was it gave me the analytics, what was going on essentially from the quantum perspective, an objective observer. And from that, it also gave me alignment frequencies to take the content of her suffering and give a coherent signal to upregulate the energy of her. And I'm like, I'm doing it. I ran it, and I can program the amount of time. I ran it all night. I clipped the device onto her collar, and then just went ahead and ran the frequencies. The next day, she was drinking water. Day 2, she was eating. Day 3, she was back to being a normal dog.
Wow, that's amazing. So you run it for the 3 nights, 2 nights.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And here's the thing, it's like, okay, there's a perfect blueprint for all of us in the field. And when I say the field, the quantum field is a stew, a soup of all information, right? The quantum field is amazing. You can call it the God field, you can call it the universe, you can call it whatever you want.
Source.
Unified source, you can call it whatever you want, but the key is that there is a perfect blueprint. It's a higher frequency than light. And that information is there. It's non-judgmental. There's no differentiation between black and white and male and female. It's just information. Life and death is just information. But it's consciousness in all forms. What happens is, in order for there to be a material self, matter needs a consciousness to observe it into reality.
Okay, let's slow down that, because that can be a little too much.
Yes.
So the matter needs to be slower consciousness.
It needs to be a slower vibration.
A slower vibration to absorb.
To be matter. So there is, Einstein did an amazing double slit experiment, remember?
Yes.
The observer effect, where it turned the waveform into particle,
Correct.
right? The observer started to make matter appear. So in other words, let's take it this way, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to hear it, it doesn't make a sound, right? There's no observer to observe that reality, right? Sure, it falls, you can see the evidence, but was there an event that anyone observed, right? So this consciousness needs to be filtered down, slowed down in frequency through a mind, the conscious observer, so that matter can be in physical form. So here lies the struggle. The perfect blueprint available. Our mind, our awareness, our conscious, our beliefs, behaviors, ego starts to have judgment. The judgment starts to write into the genetic code. The cells propagate the matter, and the material body takes form. Right? And so
that's the key, isn't it?
That's the key right there. And that material form can be either in order or disorder, some fashion in between. And we give away our power to someone else, saying it's their fault. They made me angry. That doctor told me I'm unhealthy. That person broke my heart. But that's not how it works. The consciousness of observing the perfect blueprint is the one building the material body. And we've got to pay attention to that and take responsibility for it.
And how you shift, that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah,
From
and we
that-
can heal anything.
Yes.
Yes. And the thing is, we have different levels of our body, right? So that when we get sick, when we start having some symptoms, that's at the physical level. But before it got to that physical level, it had to happen in another layer, in that energetic layer.
100%.
That the blueprint was perfect, but something happened energetically, so that we talked about how thoughts are energy, emotions are energy, everything around us, and we are energy. So we need to start changing our environment so epigenetics can help us achieve balance and well-being and health.
100%. So the step one, let's give a little practical.
Yes.
Let's talk
let's
about
do
that.
it.
A little practical.
thing to share. Yeah.
Yeah, so if we're going to give some tools to the listeners today, what can I do today to start shifting my health? So number one, the biggest or the most effective muscle that we should work out and exercise is our awareness muscle. The awareness muscle, being aware of what you're thinking. Now, it doesn't matter if you're justified in being angry. Sure, there's people who make you angry. There's reasons to get upset. But the problem is, remember, the moment you're upset, the moment you have an emotion that says, I don't like, or I am comparing myself, or I'm unworthy, whatever the emotional dialogue, whatever the thought's going on, then you downregulate. You move from the parasympathetic to the sympathetic, right? You go into the fight or flight. So fight or flight is where you're just trying to survive. And those cell receptor sites are highly agitated and you're building efficient cell receptor sites for whatever the agitation is. So moving over into parasympathetic, the rest and digest, now the body's healing. So irregardless if there is justification for being mad, justification for being jealous, justification, the fact that you're building a body that is in that state of suffering over and over, and science says 95% of the thoughts you're having today, no, how many?
95.
60 to 70,000 thoughts per day.
Yes.
95% of them are the same thoughts as yesterday, taking yesterday's content, putting it onto today, and predicting tomorrow. Nothing changes.
Correct. You're reliving that past.
Over and over. You've stopped living the moment that you decided to get on board with the suffering. And the body will propagate that cell expression genetically. And this is, we need to take our power back and start being aware. So the awareness muscle,
So
number
then
one.
awareness, that's number one. One of the things is also, yes, we are allowed to have those emotions, and we actually need to be aware of those emotions, because those emotions are indicating that there is something that we need to work on.
Yep.
So like, just acknowledge the emotion and just do a little introspection. Why am I feeling this way? Or what's happening? What's triggering that? So just become aware of everything and anything, including the emotions. Then what would be the second one?
Well, in that awareness tool too, remember that awareness observer, I'm not saying don't have the emotion. What the important part is how long of the time, the refractory period in which you're experiencing that. So here's the fun part is an emotion without an action or a charged action is wisdom. You can still have the emotion without having the action that propagates the continuation. I'm mad, and then you get mad at everybody else, and then everybody else is bad back, and now you start this cascade effect. So there's the next phase of understanding is from the awareness is the action, the practice. Is practicing elongating that choice point. Just sit in a moment, like you said. Sit with that emotion. I am angry right now. Okay, so why? Because I guarantee you, if you look a little closer, that angry moment, what was actually triggering the anger, is probably small, right? It's the past.
Correct.
Is where the charge lies.
Programming.
It's the programming.
This is just a little trigger, what happened. But then there is a deeper program, and that's, we talk a little bit about it with biological decoding. It's like, okay, there is something that triggered it, but there was a deeper programming conflict.
That's right.
That caused that trigger.
So there's a memory, and then the memory has a huge attachment to the emotion. So that's what the triggers, the charged emotions. So we need to separate that, to release those emotions from the memory. So you can experience that, okay, what it was look like in the past. But then doesn't trigger the emotion, causes spinal down the road.
Exactly. So there you go. The analytics, still allowing yourself to feel. We don't want to be a numb zombie, but emotion is richness. So emotion is to the body as thought is to the brain, and the two together create the richness of experience. And what's life about? Experiences, right? And so we need to be able to have an emotion, have an experience, but not allow that experience to be charged by the emotion. That's the wisdom part. And we can still choose not to yell at somebody because they yelled at us. We can still choose to come from the heart, right? And find out exactly, what would love do? That's one of my favorite questions. If we move into step 3, it's what would love do in this case? What would my heart say? And I ask this question: if I'm feeling an emotion, why did they say that to me? I say, heart, why did they say that to me? If you ask your heart, you get a different answer. If you just ask it with no target, the mind will come back and answer you. And the mind is always going to give you probably the worst case scenario. So you ask the heart. Heart, why were they angry at me?
Answer resides in the heart.
Right here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that would be like a step
amazing.
3.
That's amazing.
I have a self-care protocol, and a self-care protocol is number 1 is this awareness tool. right? Water, hydration, proper hydration makes a big difference in a person's life. It's funny how in the athletic arena, just 3% dehydration, this is studies show when we're working with athletes, just the 3% dehydration equals up to 10% loss of strength and up to 8% loss of contractile and extension speed.
So significant.
That's huge, just 3% dehydration. So hydration, number one, the majority of all the communication system within our body, cell to cell, is through the water. It's through light energy, right? And that sends the signals through the water of our body. So the more hydrated you are, the better the communication systems are. So hydration, proper hydration. Always breath, right? Find out, and I'll challenge all the listeners, just reach up and touch your collarbone, okay? And then reach down and find the lowest rib. That's the size of one lung. You've got two of them. So when you breathe fully into the entire lung and let it out, the body cannot be in the sympathetic nervous system during a full elongated breath. What's required to be in the sympathetic nervous system? Short, rapid breath. So the moment you shift that breathing into a full expressive breath, you've now already moved your vagal tone over into the parasympathetic.
And what I've read is that the breath, the breathing, is the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious and spirituality as well.
Absolutely.
So if you practice breathing every day, you're connecting more with that source, universe, God, all the information field. That's amazing. That's a great advice.
I noticed that about myself as I started to be more aware of the breath. Now, I watch, just in resting times or any times, my breath, I'm not done. It's like, I'm still inhaling, I'm still inhaling, I'm still inhaling, and now I'm exhaling. I've noticed how it elongated. Now it's just a practice that my body automatically does.
That's the key, isn't it?
Is the breath.
Consciously, we do that, then have to be unconscious to do the work.
Yes, very good.
So number 3 of the self-care protocol, so we've got the hydration, we've got the breathing, grounding. Grounding is a big piece. We live in these concrete buildings, right? We're sitting on this pavement.
Surrounded by electromagnetic frequencies.
Suckers. We're going to releasing it.
And your body's charging up with those frequencies. Everything has a frequency, has a spectrum of whether it be light, Wi-Fi, whether it be even voices have a frequency, right? And the body's collecting all of those, and it charges it up. Earth is a zero reference point, and we can go and ground ourselves. So get some skin in the dirt. You know what I mean? Get yourself. Now there's devices out there now, amazing devices. You can put on sheets on your bed, mats to sit on, all these things that connect into the buildings and structures that have their grounding systems into the earth. Those work as well. But there's nothing like nature, you know, to get out there and put your toes in the sand or your feet in the mud or arms around a tree, something that you're grounding yourself, and spend some time doing that. You know, a good 15 minutes a day. And science even shows now that just by looking out the window and observing a tree, some natural state out there, actually changes the mind and shifts vagal tone. So that's another. It doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be practiced, right? So next step is movement, right? We need to move this body. We got to get that body.
Right? We got to process this by moving it to releasing.
That's right.
To discharging.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's lots of movement. You can go for a walk, you know, dancing. I was just going to say that. Get some dance on, yoga, long stretching movements, because the blood has the heart to pump, but the endocrine system, you know, the lymphatic system, what's moving that? Exactly. It's our muscle systems. Our muscles move that lymphatic system. It's the pumping. So that's a very key thing for our body to be able to detox and let that turnover happen. And then of course the hydration, the water, allows the flushing through kidneys and bladder, and that whole process of cleansing, right? And my favorite, the last one in the self-care protocol is fall in love with life.
I like that, yes.
Fall in love, have a love affair with life. Find life and just fall in love with it. It's everywhere. I mean, the bird, the tree, yourself. You know, you see these living things, these living organisms. Fall in love with it. Find a reason just to have an appreciation.
I love it.
Gratitude.
'Cause I just went to see Van Gogh's exhibition, and I think that's one of, I'm probably not saying it correctly, but it's around this, that he said to love life, love a lot of things. So just fall in love with a lot of things. And it doesn't have to be a person. It can be a plant, a pet.
Or anything.
A pet.
And that will help you raise your vibration and love life. And that's what we all need to do. But that's what we're here for, to find love, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
Come from the
Right
heart.
here, isn't it?
Come from the heart.
Yes.
You know, as I was saying before, when you fall in love with life, life falls in love with you. And so you attract that same signal you're putting out, right? And then you'll find these people that come into your life. You find these experiences that come into your life. You find this favor that comes into your life. You know, it's like, wow, all I did was love life.
Well, yes. Yeah.
Well,
Allowing.
this has been amazing.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that all the listeners are going to
Thank you
be
so
having
much. Yeah.
a great things to practice, and we highly recommend
Yes.
everybody to practice all that can recommend it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me.
Wisdom. Thank you. Yeah.
And then I'm sure we'll have him in the future.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
Join us again for another Ken Talks.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.